Most men are weaker at 40 than they were at 20. Not physically, psychologically. The specific internal architecture that allows a man to withstand pressure, absorb discomfort, and operate from his own center rather than from reaction. This architecture atrophies in most men across the decades. By the time they reach middle age, they have become more fragile than they were in their youth, better at hiding it, more experienced at compensating for it, but fundamentally weaker at the core. You are on this trajectory, or you have already arrived. Nietzsche understood that weakness is not a starting condition that men gradually overcome. It is a default state that requires active, continuous, often brutal work to move beyond. The man who does not perform this work does not remain at his current level of strength. He regresses. Comfort, avoidance, and the accumulation of small surrenders slowly hollow out whatever internal capacity he began with. And the hollowing is usually complete before the man recognizes it is happening. What follows are 8 brutal realities about men who stay weak for life. Each of them describes a specific mechanism that keeps men small, not dramatically, not obviously, but through the 1,000 quiet choices that collectively produce a diminished existence. Most men will recognize multiple patterns in themselves within seconds, and most men will immediately begin constructing reasons why the patterns do not really apply. That construction is the first pattern. Brutal reality number 1. The men who stay weak optimize for comfort and call it maturity. Every time you chose the easier option, when the harder option would have produced genuine development, you chose weakness. Not because the choice itself was shameful, because the choice was not made consciously. It was made by the part of you that had already decided growth was negotiable. The part that was willing to trade the man you could have become for the specific comfort of remaining who you already were. Nietzsche diagnosed this mechanism with clinical precision. He understood that the man who optimizes for comfort does not remain the same man, plus more comfort. He becomes a different man, a smaller one, a man with less internal architecture because he has built nothing that required struggle to construct. The optimization is not neutral, it produces atrophy. And the atrophy is invisible from the inside because it removes the very conditions under which you would have noticed yourself shrinking. You have been shrinking for years. You have been calling it maturity. You have been mistaking the adjustment of your expectations downward for the acquisition of wisdom. And the difference between those two things is the difference between developing and diminishing. Most men cannot tell them apart because the diminishment feels like settling into a reasonable life. The reasonable life is often the signature of the weakness having won without resistance. This is what settled men look like from the outside. Stable, responsible, functional. Exactly what the culture rewards. And beneath the stability, a specific hollowing has been occurring. Slowly enough that the man himself cannot detect it. Thoroughly enough that by the time the hollowing is complete, there is no longer anyone present to notice. Brutal reality number 2. The weak man builds his life around avoiding discomfort instead of pursuing meaning. Examine the actual structure of your daily existence, not the narrative you tell yourself about what you are pursuing. The architecture of your actual choices, the patterns revealed by what you do when you are tired, stressed, or presented with friction you did not anticipate. These are the moments that reveal the underlying organizing principle. And for most men, the principle is avoidance. The avoidance is not always visible as avoidance. It is often disguised as prudence, as maturity, as reasonable prioritization. The opportunity that was declined because it was not the right time. The conversation that was postponed because the circumstances were not optimal. The commitment that was qualified because full commitment felt excessive. Each of these individual decisions appeared reasonable. Their accumulation produced a specific kind of life, one that was systematically organized around the elimination of meaningful friction. Schopenhauer understood that the pursuit of comfort and the pursuit of meaning are fundamentally different organizing principles. The pursuit of comfort produces specific outcomes: stability, predictability, the absence of acute suffering. The pursuit of meaning produces entirely different outcomes: growth, development, the specific discomfort of pressing against resistance that produces actual change. Most men have conflated these two pursuits. They believe that optimizing for comfort is the same as pursuing a good life. It is not. The good life, in any serious sense, requires the specific willingness to tolerate genuine discomfort in service of something the man actually values. The weak man has never developed this willingness, and every year he does not develop it, the capacity atrophies further, until the idea of deliberately choosing discomfort becomes so foreign that his mind can no longer seriously consider it. Brutal reality number 3. The weak man requires constant external validation to maintain his sense of self. Watch how weak men respond to criticism: the disproportionate defensiveness, the immediate counterattacks, the elaborate justifications constructed to neutralize the threat. These responses are not rational engagement with feedback. They are the specific reactions of a self-concept that cannot survive direct examination. The external validation is required continuously because the internal foundation is too fragile to generate its own sense of stability. Jung understood that men with underdeveloped internal architecture depend on others to maintain their identity. Every interaction becomes an opportunity for confirmation or threat. Every conversation carries the weight of whether the man will exit it feeling intact or diminished. This dependency is exhausting. It consumes psychological resources that should be available for actual living, and it makes the weak man unusually vulnerable to anyone who has learned to manipulate his need for approval. The man who has developed genuine internal strength does not require continuous external validation. He can absorb criticism, consider it on its merits, accept what is accurate, and discard what is not. He can exist in rooms where he is not the most important person, without experiencing the situation as a wound. He can hold opinions that differ from the prevailing consensus without feeling the specific anxiety that visibly strong opposition produces in weaker men. You have felt that anxiety. You know the specific tightness that appears when you realize your position is unpopular in the room. That tightness is not a personality trait. It is a symptom of underdevelopment, and the fact that it has been present your entire adult life does not mean it is natural. It means the architecture that would have eliminated it was never constructed. Brutal reality number 4. The weak man confuses being liked with being respected. These are not the same thing. Being liked is a response to the specific reduction of yourself that makes you pleasant to interact with. Being respected is a response to the specific integrity of yourself that makes you worth taking seriously. The two responses often move in opposite directions. The man who becomes more likable usually becomes less respected because the likability required him to eliminate the specific traits that would have produced genuine respect. Machiavelli understood this distinction with particular clarity. He saw that the men who were universally liked held almost no real power because their likability had been purchased by the systematic removal of whatever might have produced friction. And friction is required for respect. The man whose positions can be easily dismissed, whose displeasure carries no consequence, whose agreement costs nothing. This man is pleasant to interact with precisely because he is easy to manage. And he is easy to manage because he has surrendered the specific qualities that would have made him worth respecting. You have spent most of your life optimizing for likability. The social rewards of being liked have been visible and continuous since childhood. The social rewards of being respected have been more subtle, more delayed, and more demanding to earn. So you chose the path that produced immediate feedback, and the cumulative effect of that choice is the specific position you currently occupy in every social environment you participate in. Liked but not respected, present but not consequential, tolerated but not taken seriously. The men who have chosen differently, who prioritized respect over likability, occupy entirely different positions. They are less pleasant to be around. They are also listened to in ways you are not. They are not invited to as many events. They are also not easily dismissed. And the difference between your trajectory and theirs traces back to this single confusion that you have been maintaining your entire adult life. Brutal reality number 5. The weak man cannot distinguish between his fears and his values. Examine the things you have avoided doing in your life. Every unpursued opportunity, every unsaid truth, every unrisked venture. You have almost certainly constructed narratives explaining why each of these avoidances reflected your values. You did not pursue the opportunity because it conflicted with your priorities. You did not speak the truth because you valued the relationship more than the momentary catharsis. You did not take the risk because you valued stability. These narratives may occasionally be accurate. Most of the time, they are not. Most of the time, what you have been calling your values has been your fear wearing the costume of principle. The avoidance was produced by fear. The narrative was produced afterwards to explain the avoidance in terms the conscious mind could tolerate. And the narrative has been maintained for so long that you can no longer distinguish between the actual values you hold and the rationalizations your fears have produced. Nietzsche saw this mechanism clearly. He understood that weak men dress their fears in moral language. They take the specific cowardice of avoidance and transform it into principled restraint. They take the inability to act decisively and rebrand it as thoughtful consideration. The rebranding is so effective that the man experiences his fears as virtues. He defends his avoidances as expressions of his character. He moralizes his weakness. This is not a minor problem. It is a structural distortion of the man's entire relationship with himself, because the values that would have actually guided genuine action have been replaced by the rationalizations that justify inaction, and the man no longer has access to what he authentically wants, because the authentic wants have been buried beneath decades of fear disguised as principle. Brutal reality number 6. The weak man surrounds himself with other weak men and calls it friendship. The friendships you have maintained over the years have been selected, at least partially, by specific criteria you may not have consciously recognized. You have been drawn to men whose weaknesses complement yours. Men who will not challenge you in the specific areas where you cannot withstand challenge. Men who share your avoidances, your rationalizations, your general trajectory of comfortable diminishment. The complementarity feels like compatibility. It is something more specific than that. Stoic philosophers understood that the company a man keeps shapes the man he becomes. Marcus Aurelius returned to this principle repeatedly. The specific observation that proximity to certain kinds of men produces specific kinds of development or regression. The man who surrounds himself exclusively with men who are not stronger than him in any meaningful way has ensured that he will never be pulled upward by the environmental pressure that stronger company would have generated. Your social circle has been functioning as an ecosystem that maintains your current level of development. Not because anyone in the circle consciously arranged this, because the circle was assembled over years through the specific selection criteria that weakness applies. You chose these men because they felt comfortable. They felt comfortable because they did not demand development from you. And the absence of demand allowed the specific stagnation you have been experiencing to continue without external pressure against it. This is not an argument for abandoning your friendships. It is an argument for recognizing what they are actually doing. They are not neutral. They are shaping the man you are becoming, or more accurately, the man you are failing to become. And the shaping is occurring whether you examine it or not. Brutal reality number 7. The weak man's greatest fear is being perceived as weak. The irony of weakness is that the weak man's entire life is organized around avoiding the specific accusation of weakness. He performs strength. He displays confidence he does not actually possess. He engineers the appearance of the qualities he lacks, precisely because lacking them feels unbearable, and the performance consumes enormous amounts of psychological energy that could have been spent developing the actual qualities rather than faking them. Machiavelli observed that the man who fears being seen as weak most intensely is almost always the weakest, because strength that has been genuinely developed does not require the continuous performance of itself. The strong man does not need to prove his strength repeatedly. His strength is present. It manifests when required. It does not need to be advertised during moments when nothing is testing it. The weak man, by contrast, must continuously generate evidence of strength precisely because the evidence would not be visible otherwise. You know this performance. You have been engaged in it for years. The specific adjustments you make to appear unbothered when you are bothered. The moments when you produce the specific language of confidence despite feeling its opposite. The energy consumed by maintaining the posture that you have the qualities you have not actually developed. All of this is the weak man's continuous defensive operation against the possibility of being seen clearly. The exhausting nature of this operation is not accidental. It is a feature. The exhaustion is what prevents you from ever having enough surplus energy to do the actual work that would produce the strength you have been performing. The performance consumes the exact resources that development would have required, and the cycle continues. More performance, less development, more exhaustion, more performance. Brutal reality number 8. The weak man arrives at the end of his life, having never become a man. This is the final reality, the destination that every one of the previous 7 mechanisms has been quietly producing. The man who lived his entire life optimizing for comfort, avoiding discomfort, requiring external validation, prioritizing likability, confusing fear with values, surrounding himself with equally weak men, and performing strength rather than developing it. This man arrives at the end of his life with specific unfinished business. The business of becoming a man was never completed. The process was initiated at adolescence. It was never followed through. Jung observed that the male psyche has a specific developmental trajectory that requires active engagement to complete. The biological shift from boyhood to adulthood is automatic. The psychological shift from dependency to genuine masculine maturity is not. It requires specific confrontations, specific losses, specific absorptions of difficulty that build the internal architecture of actual manhood. Most men never engage with this trajectory. They remain in perpetual adolescence disguised as adulthood, responsibilities without sovereignty, functions without authority, age without development. This is what the end looks like for men who stay weak. A long life, conventional markers of success, relationships, career, family, the visible indicators of a complete existence. And underneath all of it, the specific emptiness of a man who never became. The adolescent psyche carried through 6 decades of biological adulthood. The developmental arrest that was never noticed, because the surface performance never broke down enough to force the recognition. You are on this trajectory. The evidence is in the specific shape of how you currently live, the comforts you have optimized, the discomforts you have avoided, the validation you still require, the likability you still prioritize, the fears you still moralize, the company you still keep, the strength you still perform instead of develop. Each of these is a mechanism that has been producing the specific outcome Jung described. The outcome is not hypothetical. It arrives automatically unless actively disrupted, and the disruption requires a specific kind of brutal self-examination that the weak man has spent his entire life avoiding, which is why, for most men, the trajectory is not disrupted. It continues until the end. You will continue it too. The same patterns will continue operating in your daily choices. The same avoidances, the same rationalizations, the same continuous small surrenders that collectively produce the specific kind of man who arrives at the end having never become. And on that final day, the man you could have been will not be present. He will never have existed. the weakness will have completed its work, exactly as it was designed to.